exposed. He blocked Shadur Sanders from the Las Vegas Raiders.
First of all, when I was with the Raiders, he was one of our top choices. If I would have stayed there, there's no way he goes to the 5th round. I'm making that choice and the decision that we're drafting. Mark Davis was on board with that. Our organization was on board. We believed in what we...
Tom Brady has called me out. I guess he's called me a liar. So I'm about to call BS on Tom Brady because, Tom, you know and I know everything I said about you and Shadur Sanders is obviously exact.
The story of Shadur Sanders' dramatic slide in the NFL draft was, from the very beginning, a tale searching for an author. It was a mystery that demanded an explanation, something clean, logical, and definitive to justify why a quarterback with his pedigree, spotlight, and flashes of electrifying talent wasn't called until the 5th round. The public, the media, and the league itself needed a reason. Silence or uncertainty was unacceptable. So, a narrative was built, a story about character concerns, interview missteps, and maturity questions. It was a story that felt safe because it was familiar. It wrapped a complicated, multi-layered evaluation process into a simple, moralistic package. One prospect, one flaw, one consequence. A clean story. Move on. But clean stories are rarely true, and true stories are rarely simple. The explanation for Shadur Sanders' fall never stayed consistent. It was a shape-shifting creature of justification. First, it was his arm talent, not quite NFL ready. Then, it was his fit within complex pro systems, too much of a product of his college scheme. Then, the focus pivoted to the intangible, his attitude, his leadership, his tone in
Shadur Sanders. What happened, Tom? Why did he go so late in the draft?
I mean, it's a good question. I wasn't a part of any evaluation process.
Interviews. Scouts whispered about body language, posture, even the cadence of his breathing. The goalposts of critique kept moving, each new reason erasing the last, each presented with the assured finality of a verdict. This inconsistency was the first crack in the facade. When explanations evolve this rapidly, it's not because new facts are emerging. It's because the old ones weren't sturdy enough to hold the weight of the conclusion. Then, a new version emerged, one that didn't sound like scouting anymore. It sounded like gossip. A leak, quiet but persistent, connected the slide to Tom Brady. The rumor, repackaged from old whispers and sprinkled with the glitter of celebrity, went like this. During a pre-draft interview, Shadur Sanders made an ill-advised joke, a quip connected to Tom Brady's highly publicized personal life. This joke, the story claimed, was passed through the insular corridors of the NFL like a secret. It reached Brady, Shedur's supposed mentor, and Brady, offended or protective of his legacy, used his considerable influence, particularly with the Las Vegas Raiders, where his friend and former teammate occupied a key front office role to steer teams away. The rumor
best you want. Tom Brady had it. Tom Brady told Robert Kraft that when he met him, hey, you're our 6th-round pick, right? He said, yeah, you're the best decision your organization, I'm the best decision your organization ever made. That's what you want.
Like the Brady analogy there, like, I don't think we're talking about anything that's close to the same category. You know, the way, like Tom Brady's pre-draft process was nothing like Shadur Sanders' pre-draft process. Again,
it wasn't.
Suggested that entire franchises, in a chain reaction of risk aversion and deference to a legend, decided that this joke was the line. Not football IQ, not throwing mechanics, not pocket presence a joke. On the surface, it was a perfect, juicy scandal. It had all the elements: a legendary quarterback, a brash young prospect, personal drama, and shadowy backroom dealings. It was tailor-made for the outrage and engagement cycles of the modern media. It transformed a complex draft evaluation into a Shakespearean drama of betrayal and consequence. People latched onto it because it was interesting. It felt explanatory. It provided a villain, a victim, and a moral. But the moment you slow down and examine this story, not as drama but as a plausible sequence of events, the entire edifice begins to crumble. This isn't an exposé of what happened. It's an expose of how narratives are manufactured when the truth is too messy, too boring, or too uncomfortable to confront. Let's trace the supposed journey of this rumor, because its path reveals its absurdity. For this story to be true, a specific and highly unlikely series of
he said what he had to say, and he said it just unconvincingly enough that we could chalk it up to another example of Tom Brady, bad liar.
Well, I mean, we're gonna play it. First off, I mean, yeah, it's duh. Everybody in the organization said Tom Brady was going to have a big hand in decision-making and doing that, especially at the quarterback position. We'd be crazy not to ask Tom Brady and have him involved in those conversations. Then we get to the biggest quarterback story in the league.
Events had to occur. First, Shadur Sanders, in a high-stakes job interview with multi-million-dollar implications, allegedly decides to mock the very personal and painful marital dissolution of Tom Brady, a figure he has publicly respected. A man who had taken time to mentor him. This already requires a suspension of disbelief regarding Shedur's basic sense of self-preservation and social intelligence. Second, someone in that interview room, a coach, a scout, a general manager, hears this joke and is so scandalized that they don't simply note it as a poor judgment call in their private report. Instead, they actively begin spreading it. They pick up the phone or send a text, not to clarify or contextually, but as salacious gossip. You won't believe what Sanders just said about Brady. Third, this second or third-hand account, now stripped of all original context, tone, and intent, travels through the NFL's gossip network. With each retelling, it is embellished, the tone becomes more malicious. The intent becomes more calculated. A casual, potentially clumsy remark is hardened into a deliberate act of disrespect. Fourth, this fully cooked, heavily spiced version of events allegedly lands on Tom Brady's desk. We are to believe that Brady, one of the most strategically minded and professionally disciplined athletes in history, receives this hearsay and doesn't question its source, verify its accuracy, or consider the possibility of misinterpretation. Instead, he accepts it as gospel truth. Fifth, and most crucially, Brady then allegedly uses this gossip as a basis to actively sabotage Shedur's career prospects. He supposedly calls his friend, Raiders GM Tom Spicek, and says, "Don't draft him." And Spicek, along with other GMs who presumably get the same message, complies. They ignore months of scouting reports, film study, analytics, and their own staff's evaluations because of a third-hand story about a joke. This is not how the NFL operates. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry built on risk management.
Apparently, there's new leaks, which are really old leaks, about Shadur Sanders' draft fall. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but let's go through it real quick. So let's hear it.
Saw that it was made publicly recently. The reason the Raiders did not draft Shadur is because Shadur was making fun of Tom Brady getting cheated on and left by his wife in an interview with another team. And that got back to Brady, his mentor. And that's why his, whatever, the dude Bug or whatever on Twitter, that's why he went on a Cleveland interview after the draft and said, Tom Brady.
Intense due diligence and protecting organizational assets. General managers stake their careers and their team's futures on draft decisions. The idea that they would outsource such a critical choice and base it on personal gossip relayed by a player, even a legendary one, is not just unlikely. It's professional malpractice of the highest order. Front offices do not make decisions this way. They make them through layers of analysis, debate, and consensus building, all documented and defended. A rumor this flimsy wouldn't crater a draft grade. It would be flagged as unverified and weighed against a mountain of tangible evidence. What this rumor does resemble, however, is a classic post hoc justification. Once a player starts an unexpected slide, the league's rumor mill kicks into overdrive to explain it. Silence is anxiety-inducing. People need a reason. So, reasons are fabricated, retrofitted, or exaggerated. The slide itself becomes proof of the flaw. He must have said something becomes, I heard he said something, which becomes, everyone knows what he said. The narrative is born not from truth, but from the vacuum of a satisfying explanation. The Tom Brady rumor gained particular traction because of its specific link to the Las Vegas Raiders. The logic was seductive. Brady is close with Raiders GM Tom Spicek. The Raiders had multiple opportunities to draft Shedeur and passed every time. Therefore, Brady must have intervened. But this theory ran headlong into a direct, on-the-record contradiction from within the Raiders organization itself. Former
To say. One, you need to see the whole clip because Brady is very unconvincing as he stammers,
and stutters
his
right,
way
right,
through
right.
until he gets to "it's a good question."
Right.
It's like,
right, exactly right. Exactly
and
right.
number two,
Yeah.
two things can be true about Tom Brady: greatest quarterback of all time with Patrick Mahomes on his heels. Okay.
head coach Antonio Pierce spoke plainly. We wanted Shadur Sanders. The Raiders wanted Shedeur. The building wanted him. The staff wanted him. The scouts wanted him. This statement is a torpedo aimed at the gossip submarine. If the entire football operation, coaches, scouts, personnel staff, was aligned in wanting Shadur, why did they pass on him 7 times? Pierce's implication was clear. The decision was overruled by a single, powerful authority. The natural assumption points to owner Mark Davis, but the Brady rumor desperately tries to redirect that authority to an external influence, to Tom Brady whispering in Spicek's ear. This creates a paradox of power. Is Mark Davis an owner who delegates football decisions to his hired GM, or is he a meddler who overrides his entire staff? Is Tom Spicek a competent GM making independent choices, or is he a puppet taking orders from a former teammate? The Brady rumor requires us to believe in a shadow government within the Raiders, where Brady's whims supersede the collective will of the football organization and even the owner's alleged support. Mark Davis was on board with that. It's a convoluted conspiracy theory that collapses under the weight of its own assumptions. A far simpler, less dramatic explanation exists. The Raiders, like other teams, had Shedeur graded on their board, but when it came time to pick, other players were graded higher. Perhaps they valued immediate need over developmental quarterback potential. Perhaps they had genuine football concerns that outweighed their interest. This is boring. This is normal. This happens every draft. But it doesn't.
Here's the initial Deflategate press conference. Tom Brady is a horrible liar, which is good. I'd rather deal with somebody who's a horrible liar than a really good liar. Because with a really good liar, it's like trying to figure out what Oz the Mentalist is up to. With a bad liar, we at least know he's full of shit. He kind of knows he's full of shit, but he's saying what he has to say, and we can make sense of it. He doesn't want to affect his relationship with Shadur Sanders. Of course he was involved in the event.
Feed the myth-making engine. At the center of this storm stands Tom Brady, and his public reaction is perhaps the most revealing piece of evidence that the rumor is built on sand. When asked directly on the Jake Paul podcast why Shedeur fell so far, Brady did not offer a smooth, prepared defense. He stammered. He paused. It's a good question, he claimed. I wasn't a part of any evaluation process. For proponents of the rumor, this was proof of his guilt, a bad liar caught in a lie. As one commentator put it, he said what he had to say, and he said it just unconvincingly enough that we could chalk it up to another example of Tom Brady, bad liar. But let's parse this. If Brady had actively conspired to sink Shadeur's draft stock, would he be stammering and looking uncomfortable when asked about it? Or would he have a polished, plausible denial ready? Brady is one of the most media-trained individuals on the planet. He has navigated press conferences for over 2 decades, through Spygate, Deflategate, and countless other controversies. If he were lying, he would likely be better at it. His discomfort reads far more genuinely as someone caught in a no-win situation. He is likely aware of the ugly rumor tying him to Shadur's fall. To deny involvement too vigorously might be seen as protesting too much, or could be twisted into confirmation. To acknowledge any role would fuel the fire and damage his relationship with Shadur. So he gives a clumsy non-answer, the answer of someone trapped by a narrative they didn't create and can't cleanly escape. His awkwardness isn't the mark of a conspirator. It's the mark of a man being asked to answer for a story that exists largely in the public imagination. Furthermore, the nature of Brady and Shedur's subsequent relationship punches a massive hole in the rumor. If this joke had caused a genuine relationship-ending betrayal, Would there
Sanders, the star quarterback for the Colorado Buffaloes, I love this kid. I love his talent. I love his skill set. I love his poise. I love how he responds under pressure. I love how he's embracing everything. Being primetime Deion Sanders' son, he ain't shied away from nothing. This brother's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. I'm telling you, he's special. But I will like to remind you of this. After Tom Brady, a person that's mentoring him, a 7-time champion, he was told not only about all of that ice he was wearing on his wrist, not only that,
interactions be as they are? The rumor requires us to believe that a profound breach occurred, yet there is no public evidence of lasting animosity. The silence isn't the silence of a feud. It's the normal silence of two professionals whose paths have diverged. The rumor often drags the New York Giants into its orbit as another team that supposedly passed due to this whispered indiscretion. Bringing the Giants into the story is meant to add credibility, but for those familiar with the organization's recent history, it does the opposite. The Giants have developed a reputation for strategic leaking and narrative revisionism, especially when things go poorly. When coaching regimes fail, leaks emerge about player recalcitrance. When development stalls, stories surface about locker room chemistry. This is a well-established pattern in NFL circles, using anonymous sources to shape public perception and distribute blame after the fact. An organization with this modus operandi is not a reliable source for an unattributed salacious story about a prospect's interview. It is, however, a perfect vector for one. Mentioning the Giants in this context doesn't bolster the rumor. It highlights the very ecosystem, anonymous sourcing, post hoc justification, blame shifting in which such rumors are bred and thrive. The entire narrative hinges on a fundamental misinterpretation of Shadur Sanders himself. The rumor mill paints a caricature, a brash, entitled, tactless young man who would casually burn bridges with a legend. This caricature is then used to backform the idea that he must have done something reckless. But this image doesn't survive contact with the actual person. Listen to Shadur Sanders speak at length. He is
on Jake Paul's podcast, blasted me for saying he obviously told Raiders GM John Spytek not to draft Shedeur. That's my opinion. That's my take. And I know I'm right. So I fired back at Tom Brady, pointing out that Spytek, his former teammate at Michigan, had said before the draft that the Raiders would be fools not to ask Tom Brady, now Raiders owner, about quarterbacks they were considering in the draft. They'd be absolute fools not to ask Tom Brady about quarterbacks. I mean,
thoughtful, verbose, and analytical. He gives long, detailed answers. He explains his process, his mistakes, his growth. He is human, not a robot spouting cliches. In a league that often prefers its quarterbacks to be blandly inoffensive, this humanity becomes a liability. A long answer can be edited down to a soundbite taken out of context. A nuanced thought can be stripped of its complexity and labeled evasive. A moment of casual honesty can be isolated and weaponized as poor judgment. The league professes to value authenticity, but its tolerance for it is narrowly defined. Authenticity is allowed if it's packaged as relentless hustle or quiet leadership. The kind of authenticity Shadur exhibits verbal, expressive, confident, without being performatively humble, makes the old guard uneasy. That discomfort gets linguistically coded into scouting reports as maturity concerns, football character questions, or too much celebrity. Once that label is applied, every interaction is filtered through it. A joke becomes a sign of disrespect. Confidence becomes arrogance. Self-assurance becomes a lack of coachability. This is confirmation bias in its purest form. The evaluators aren't seeing the player anymore. They're seeing the profile they've already written. In this environment, a rumor about a joke isn't a fact to be verified. It's a piece of evidence that perfectly fits the predetermined conclusion. The irony of resilience. The most profound irony in this saga is how Shadur Sanders has conducted himself since the draft. According to the dramatic narrative, he is a player who lacks self-awareness and accountability, the very flaws that supposedly caused his fall. Yet, observe his behavior. There were no petulant social media eruptions, no blame-shifting interviews, no cryptic tweets. There was steady, focused work. He has spoken openly about the areas he needs to improve footwork, progression reads, NFL speed. He has done so without deflection, owning his developmental path. This is the opposite of a player defined by a moment of poor judgment. This is the behavior of someone on a long journey, with a clear-eyed view of the road ahead. The narrative insisted his slide was a punishment. His response has been to treat it as a starting point. And this, perhaps, is what the narrative architects feared most. A player who doesn't conform to their dramatic arc. A player who, instead of crumbling under the weight of their story, simply gets to work rewriting it on his own terms. So, if it wasn't a joke, what was it? Why did Shadur Sanders slide? The answer is likely as boring as it is complex. A confluence of legitimate football concerns amplified by the discomfort he inspires in a traditional, risk-averse ecosystem. The football concerns are real. He operated in a unique college system that asked him to make specific, often predetermined reads. His physical tools, while good, weren't considered elite by prototypical NFL standards. He faced questions about consistency and his ability to thrive within a structured NFL progression. These are normal questions for many quarterbacks. For most, these questions result in a slide into the second or third round. What pushed Shadur further was the other factor. He is not a blank slate. He arrives with immense celebrity, a powerful father, and a personality that refuses to be muted. He represents ambiguity. He doesn't fit neatly into the safe, known archetypes. For decision-makers whose jobs are on the line with every pick, ambiguity is terrifying. It's easier to draft a player with clearer flaws, but a more predictable personality profile than to bet on a talent who defies easy categorization. The Tom Brady rumor was a gift to these decision-makers. It transformed that terrifying ambiguity into a simple, scandalous story. It allowed them to reframe their risk aversion as a principled stand against disrespect. It let them off the hook. Instead of admitting, "We were scared of the unknown," they could imply, "We discovered a fatal character flaw." This is how these stories always end. Not with accountability, but with amnesia. As Shadur Sanders takes his first NFL snaps, the narrative is already shifting. The character concerns are morphing into competitive fire. The arrogance is being rebranded as poise. The same traits that were red flags are becoming green lights because the reality on the field is refusing to cooperate. With the pre-written script, people will claim they never believed the rumor. They'll say they always saw his talent. They'll applaud his resilience. The collective memory will be rewritten in real time, erasing the weeks of gossip and character assassination. But the pattern remains. The Shadur Sanders draft saga was never really about Shadur Sanders, or Tom Brady, or a joke. It was a case study in how the NFL machine processes difference. It revealed the league's lingering unease with confident black quarterbacks who own their spotlight. It demonstrated the power of anonymous sourcing to create realities untethered from fact. And it showed how a hungry media ecosystem can turn a whisper into a shout, and a shout into an accepted truth. The secret that could blow the entire narrative apart was never a secret at all. It was the obvious, boring truth that we all chose to ignore in favor of a better story. That sometimes players slide because of 1,000 small, complicated football reasons. And sometimes the most dramatic explanation is the least true one. The real conspiracy wasn't in a draft room. It was in our collective willingness to believe a fairy tale over the far less cinematic, but far more human reality.